Good evening, or middle of the night, or morning, everyone on Speed Gaming at the No Kid Hungry Marathon. Welcome all. We are showcasing the Final Fantasy I Randomizer here tonight. I'm Cheesenator, and I'm going to be calling a race with Jet2980. Jet, how are you doing?
Doing fantastic. Yeah, we had another race on earlier, yesterday, which was showing off a little bit more of a traditional flag set. Well, tonight we have something a little bit special on. So what are we doing tonight, Cheese?
Sure, we're going to be showing off the entrance and floor shuffle feature on the randomizer, as well as a number of other fun modifications to the game. You'll be seeing shuffled item magic, so there'll be random magic spells able to be cast by the gear in the game. You'll be seeing a whole lot of other fun experimental flags that have been developed by the devs for this randomizer. It's going to be a fun one. These two runners are just here to have a good time. Hope you will too in chat, and by all means, if you've got any questions about how the Final Fantasy I randomizer works, please drop them in chat for us, and we'll do our best to respond. I'm going to let the runners get started here shortly, and we can get this action on our way.
Yeah, for sure. So, for those of you who know maybe Super Mario hacks or various things like that, this is not going to be the vanilla version of Final Fantasy. And even by the randomizer standards, this is something a little bit more. So we have a fantastic dev team in our community who works hard to make sure that we're adding new and exciting ways to play every day. So the first thing that you're going to be seeing probably both our runners do is they may be checking out Canaria Castle, which is normally kind of the starting location. It's a nice, safe, friendly location, but unfortunately, that's not the case in this seed. We have entrance shuffle on, and that means that each of our key overworld locations is going to be shuffled around. So with the exception of Canaria, the town, we don't know where anything else is going to be. So Canaria Castle could be over in Provoca. Even Temple of Fiends, the final dungeon, could be anywhere. So these runners are going to have to scour the world to make sure that they figure out where everything is.
They've been started behind the scenes here, so we'll see them start live with just a short bit of delay. And yeah, we got some fun flags on tonight. One of the newer things we're playing with, we've got random weapon and armor modification bonuses. We might see that as they go shopping. Speaking of shopping, we've got an extra town here immediately accessible. That's the town of Melmond at the Canaria Castle.
Yeah, so Melmond was going to have level 5 magic available to them. Not something they're going to be able to cast right away, but ooh, we have some good magic right off the bat.
Oh yeah, this magic is unreal. Already they've got multiple different elemental sweepers for the Black Mage, and they've got Fade, the strongest white spell, and also a non-elemental spell. So really, they're just going to be blasting through things.
Yeah, not only that, they also have probably the most important thing in Entrance Floor Shuffle for the early game, which is a way to move around the floors and get out of some deep dungeons in Warp. So Warp is going to allow the runners to go from the current floor they're on to the previous floor that leads down to the one that they're on. So basically it lets you go up a floor. And this is going to be really important for the runners to be able to get out of dungeons safely if they dive all the way to the bottom and find some goodies.
Some other things of note, the Temple of Fiends actually rolled vanilla. That's not necessarily supposed to be there, but it is today, so you may recognize that as the place where you go to fight Garland if you're a fan of the vanilla game. Devious got there a little bit ahead of Burt, since Burt took the time to look at that Melmond town and shop there, got some gear for his fighter.
Yeah, and something else is that, yes, we're going to be rescuing Princess Sarah, which is usually kind of the first task in the game. Unfortunately, because we don't know where Canaria Castle is right now, she's going to disappear, and we won't be able to get an item from her until we find her later in the game, wherever Canaria Castle is.
Oh my goodness, and talking about weapons and armor being modified, we've found our Excalibur, one of the strongest swords in the game that the knight can equip, is rolled with a +4 modifier, and we'll explain what that means in just a bit.
Another thing you might note, and that's going to be coming up on Burt Reynolds' screen here shortly in the top left, is you're going to see him pull a special item out of the chest, and it's something that's not in the vanilla game. So that it will be, we'll see here shortly, and there it is, it's an orblet. And these orbs are actually going to be a key part of the win condition for this particular flag set. So instead of having to kill the 4 fiends as you do in the vanilla game, in order to get into the Temple of Fiends Revisited to go defeat the final boss, Chaos. Instead, these runners are going to need to collect orblets instead.
Also, you may have noticed that DVS unfortunately wiped while walking back from the Temple of Fiends. So because on entrance and floor shuffle, Canaria Castle isn't guaranteed to be right at the beginning, talking to Sarah after you defeat Garland doesn't automatically warp you. So DVS had to make the long walk back and ran into some mad ponies that cast Frost. A common thing that happens in this randomizer is that the skills and spells of the various enemies throughout the game have been shuffled, and many, many dangerous things can roll your way, especially in the early game.
So while these runners check out Canaria for the second time, we have a few donations. So we have Big Red donating 20 bucks for the Hori Switch Split Pad Pro and saying, "For the funk?"
We also have Admiring Willow donated $20 towards the Hori Switch Split Pad Pro, excuse me. It says, "Give me more of this, dude." I'm not sure if that was a reference to Willow or to the Final Fantasy Randomizer.
Either way, we appreciate it very much, so thank you for those donations. And here we go. So we just went through a few different key dungeons on Burt Reynolds' side all at once, in that we saw Volcano quickly, and then we got down to the Dwarf Cave. So the Dwarf Cave is going to be an important place, as they're going to be able to turn in a few key items there in both the Adamant as well as the TNT. But that's something that they don't have quite yet, so they'll be coming back to that later.
Oof. And we got another early game struggle here. The imps, which are the most common type of enemy you can encounter in the nearby zones around Canaria, have a stun touch. There are many enemies in the vanilla game that have some kind of a bad touch, stun, poison, death, stone, and so forth. Those all get shuffled as well too. And so yeah, imps are not guaranteed to be safe.
Yeah, so as DVS here is in Matoya's cave, the vanilla location for that, and is going through this floor that is normally in Volcano, we quickly touched on entrances being shuffled, but now you're starting to see another key feature, which is that we've also shuffled the floors around, which means that, we could have the first floor of Earth Cave first, and then you can go into the second floor of Volcano, and then all the ways to, say, Ice Cave. So these runners are going to have to be adapting on the fly, as they never know exactly what's going next. But for the viewers, the most important thing in most cases is going to be whatever's on the bottom, as they're going to be trying to find bosses so that they can get a few shards from them, and they're also going to be trying to find places where they can turn in incentive locations, exactly like the dwarf there.
Yep. This treasure hunt format that we're playing, we are trying to find 32. They have been named Orblet in this particular seed, but you may hear us call them shards or what have you throughout. It's just kind of an interchangeable way to refer to the treasure. That is our goal. Once we have 32 of those, we will be able to open the Temple of Fiends and go fight the final bosses.
And we may also have a few surprises for what you'll be seeing for the final bosses, but we'll keep that in our back pocket until we get a little bit closer to that.
So another thing you'll use pretty regularly when playing this randomizer is you've noticed that the runners have had some trouble with these enemies, and they've in fact died a lot, and they've had a lot of their characters go down. You want to save very frequently, so those who play the randomizer will buy save items from the shop and then use them on the overworld or right outside the exits of dungeons. You can't save within a dungeon, so the best chance you've got is to save outside and just try and get lucky making your way through it. Sometimes you might have to leave early using that warp spell, sometimes you might have to just fully reset, or sometimes you might die and you have no choice but to reset back to your last save.
So at the bottom of this seafloor, we have one of the Cardia Isles. So normally this is something that's not accessible until you get the floater, but in this case, because once again the floors are shuffled, we get access to a bunch of free chests here, and this is going to give us an opportunity to get some gear and potentially some of those wind conditions. And there's an Orblet right there.
Getting chests early in the game is really powerful. Chests are better early than late because in the early game you're looking for money to buy things from the shops as well as to buy magic. We were able to comfortably get all of our level 1 magic thanks to the starting gold usually being sufficient for that. But there was some, expensive magic at the Melman shop, and we want to get suited up. Our characters do need some weapons and armor, so they can start resisting the physical attacks of enemies.
So you see right now that Burt Reynolds is just kind of walking around the seafloor, and that's because the seafloor is actually the sea dungeon is usually the third Fiend dungeon, which is fairly close to the end of the game. And because of that, this has some higher level enemies that he wants to get some good EXP off of, so he's going to get much better fights here compared to just walking around on the overworld.
Yep, that's the other thing that's super good early. When you level up in FF1, you get stats, you get HP, you get magic charges. All of these things help your party be overall more resilient and give you more resources. And especially in a floor entrance shuffle where you potentially are diving, 5 to 10 floor deep dungeons, you don't know what you're getting into. So the more resources you can go in with, the safer you're going to be.
Yeah, not only that, they in particular have Lit 3, which is very effective against, your traditional Pokemon or any video game really, where lightning is good against water type. Yeah, that's also the case here. So a lot of the enemies in the seafloors are going to be weak to Lit 3.
Mm-hmm. Also, I just noticed the level 5 white shop has exit, so we have the duo of the best 2 spells for this format. We talked a lot about that level 1 warp, but level 5 exit, that gets you straight out of wherever you are in the dungeon all the way to the surface, whereas warp is just 1 floor at a time. And we also have white mages. So can we describe this party comp? I don't think we really talked about the parties that our runners brought here today.
Yeah, so both runners are running what we in the community call a fighter rainbow, and that is a fighter who's kind of the jack of all trades, gets great HP, gets good ability to hit, has a fantastic strength gain, and also can cast level 1 through 4 white magic once he promotes, coupled with one of each of the types of mages. So the white mage is going to be able to do healing, as well as really damage undead, as well as cast exit, but in this particular seed, just because Fade rolled so early, also going to be able to deal a ton of damage. The black mage, an offensive specialist, is going to let our fighters swing harder and faster, as well as cast things like Lightning 3. And then our red mage is kind of a mixture of both, going to be able to get a few less spells than both of the other 2 mages, but can be a force to be reckoned with depending on where the magic rolled. This party is generally considered to be a good all-round party, and it never really... It's not usually the absolute best, but it's also almost never the absolute worst, in that it has access to pretty much all the tools you could ever need to win a seed.
That's right. And so over here at the Dwarf Cave location, at the very first floor, we've shuffled in the 3rd floor of the Sky Fortress, which is a really good floor to find for a number of reasons. This pack, for example, that Burt Reynolds just ran into, is really good experience if you can defeat it with Fade, which the Man-Cats won't resist. So in general, there are a lot of good fights for experience on this floor. You can save right outside. Beyond that, there's also 14 treasure chests that are accessible pretty quickly from the door. So one of the more lucrative floors, certainly, to shuffle to the surface. And right below it is the floor of the Fire Fiend Carry. Yeah,
so another key point here is that not only does it have the Fire Fiend Carry, and the fiends are still worth defeating, as lighting the orb, quote-unquote, will give them 2 shards, or 2 orblets, which is going to help them get to the end of the game. But there's also an incentive chest right here, which is traditionally called the Red Dragon chest, as that's the tile that's in front of it normally. And this is going to give them something that's going to let them progress, as this is actually the last location they currently have access to. So this is going to be something like the ship or the canoe.
Of course, you can see that Fade spell that they were able to buy so early on is doing a lot of work. They got a canal here from this incentive. That's pretty solid. The flags we're playing on, they're extended open progression, so they'll actually be able to walk over a bridge here to the south over what you would normally see as the the canal that's like blown open when you take the TNT to the dwarves. They'll actually be able to walk over there and all the way down to the Elfland Castle location and some of the nearby entrances to explore those too.
And DVS is trying to get back to save, and you can see the importance of those save items. So now that he has a little bit more money, you're going to see him buy a big stack of those, I would assume. Because what he's doing right now is very dangerous. If he gets taken out right now, he could lose a lot of progress. So just hoping to get away from these last few encounters here. So both are runners right now, very neck and neck, right beside each other. The early parts of these seeds tend to be fairly restricted in terms of what you can see, depending on the key items you get early. But once we get a little bit more movement options, and the key movement options you're going to be looking for are the canoe and the floater, then these runners will have a lot more choices put in front of them, and we'll have to see where they decide to go.
Yeah, the progression through a seed in this format of entrance and floor shuffle can be quite scattershot, and we don't necessarily need the traditional means of forward progression. So, there's so many entrances available here just on this initial continent, but a canoe would give us access to 3 more, and further, a ship would open up most of the rest of the world. So it is possible that you might see the runners finish the game without ever actually getting to fly.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, especially with a shard hunt, because that just means that there's a possibility that you don't even need to go to, say, Onrak to get into Sea Shrine, or that even Sea Shrine is there, or where the various fiends are. So you may never see an airship. So for those of you who like the airship music, maybe a little bit unfortunate.
Yeah. So quick update on what our runners are doing. Burt Reynolds is actually looking to open one of the linked chests. The original game was programmed such that there were actually multiple chests who, in all their different locations, share the exact same contents. Once one of them is looted, all of the linked chests are also looted. And it's important to know about those when you're running an entrance and floor shuffle, because you might only get access to one of said linked chests. And Burt Reynolds just looked at one that otherwise would have been on a different floor entirely. But here we go, DVS is fighting the first fiend, Carrie the Fiend of Fire.
So Carrie in the vanilla game is going to have 600 HP, and our current flag set's going to allow her to have up to 1800. So she's DVS is really depending on these spell charges here, as the fighter's only doing about 100 damage. So hoping that she rolls on the lower end of this. Meanwhile, Burt's doing the exact same thing.
DVS did go back to the shop at Canaria to buy a good sword, but it looks like Carrie rolled pretty high on hits. A lot of things can change about enemies and bosses with their modified stats, and Burt Reynolds, though, was successful. Their defense and their HP and all these things can roll up, but so can the number of times that the boss can hit you. So in this case, we saw that that Carrie rolled well above her vanilla number of hits. We saw 10 hits, so that's really hard to resist physically, but Burt had enough characters alive with a high enough level.
Yeah, and DVS making the adjustment to bring up one more character. He was deciding to go for a 3-person strat for a little bit of the seed, and that 3-person strat versus 4-person strat is something that happens quite a bit in these types of races. So what's the advantages of going with a smaller party versus a larger party, Cheese?
Sure. In Final Fantasy I, experience is distributed only to your living, non-stoned party members, which has advantages if you are looking to funnel more experience onto fewer of your characters and level them faster. Then you can manipulate that to your advantage. But we've got Burt, who's actually found the Canaria Castle shuffled down into the Elfland area, and we've got a ship and a slab, so we actually know where Melmond is. We know half of that slab translation, but the ship in the canal opens up a lot more of the world for us to explore.
Yeah, so the slab, as Cheeseinator was saying, requires 2 kind of parts. You need Melmond to go talk to Dr. Un, who's going to teach you how to speak Lefanish from the slab, and then you need to go to Lefane itself and then speak to the friendly people there now that you can understand their language to get a key item from them.
Alright, So DVS has also defeated Carry. Again, the reward for this fight wasn't an orb, as is traditional, but was 2 of our orblets, our little endgame win conditions that we need so many of. Some of the fiends are more lucrative. If they come across Kraken or Tiamat, those will be worth 4 orblets per, but Carry was only 2.
Yeah, and Lich is also going to be 2, so the 2 first fiends are worth a little bit less than the 2 latter ones, just kind of based off their difficulty, but you'll often see the runners take out the fiends if possible, as it really does just lower the amount of chests that you need to open.
Down at our marsh cave, we had a dead end. If you've played the vanilla game and you know that there are those islands full of dragons that you can only access once you have the floater, the Cardia Islands, and some of those are just plain dead ends, and all that's inside them are like a dragon or 2 that you can speak with, and one of those dead ends rolled down there to the marsh cave. But Burt Reynolds is out of what we call the inner sea, and he's onto the continent that has Melmond and Earth Cave in the vanilla game, and we found the town of Gaea.
So the town of Gaea is notable for a few things. One, it has both level 7 and 8 magic, which is not going to be helpful now, but the runners may come back to it, especially if the 2 spells in particular are going to be a life spell or fast or temper, as those are all like very important late game spells. The other notable thing is that if we find a bottle, we'll be able to turn it into a fairy here. And when we talk to the fairy, we can pick up a key item from it. So DVS also finding Canaria Castle, and now that they found Canaria Castle, they've already saved Sarah from Garland, so they're able to get 2 key items instead of just 1. An interesting kind of change-up in entrance shuffle is that sometimes you're going to find the castle and not have found Temple of Fiends, so you'll have to talk to just the king. And sometimes you'll find Temple of Fiends and can't find the castle, which is kind of what was happening here. But at this point, both our runners have the same key items.
And speaking of key items, so the floater, the holy rock that lets us resurrect the ancient flying ship from the desert, has actually been found. And what's great about this particular flag set, the map has been modified. There's actually a ship dock at the bottom of the Ryokan Desert where you can make use of that floater. So Burt Reynolds, paying 10,000 or so gold in that shop, can now go and get in the air way faster than we expect it to be.
Yeah, the floater is definitely worth 10,000 gold. The floater is worth way more than that. So that's a really nice pickup for Burt Reynolds. And now the floater, not only does it allow access to more areas, it also doesn't have encounters while you fly around. So it's just a huge speed up and a really big part of being able to go fast through this mid-game. So that's going to be a nice pickup for Burt. Now luckily for DVS, he's not going to be far behind and going to be picking that up shortly as well.
Another thing of note here, this town that we found, Gaea, has silver bracelet +3s. These silver bracelet +3s are actually really, really good, economical, efficient armor. Probably good enough to be endgame gear for our mages. With this special flag that we've got on that gives the plus and minus modifications, those silver 3 bracelets have 21 absorb, which is just a phenomenal number.
Yeah, so we were talking quickly about these plus and minus weapons. So what do these different kind of, what we call blurst or random armor weapon bonuses do in particular?
Yes, when we say blurst, we mean blessed or cursed. And the blessing is a range, the blessing or curse are a range from -5 to +5. That affect, for weapons, it affects their damage, their accuracy, and their critical hit rates, and for armor, it affects their total absorb value as well as their negative evade penalty. You're obviously always looking for modifiers over 0 for blessed weapons and armor. But sometimes you'll get something that's so good that you still need to use it even if it rolls down like a ribbon.
Yeah, so you'll see the runners making those adjustments, but the interesting thing about it is that it really lets some swords shine that you don't normally see. Like, the best weapons in this game, the Excal, the Moss Immune, the Vorpal, the Katanas, those will often be used, but because we have these Blessed Curse, you'll get to see the runners use a few more if they get really high rolls. And speaking of ribbons, Burt Reynolds just picked up his first one, and a ribbon's a really important piece of gear for these runners.
So that's at the volcano entrance, it looks like, and that is an incentive ribbon where that floor is the incentivized sky floor. This is the second floor of the sky fortress, and in the vanilla game there's an adamant in that chest that leads to your Excalibur, so that's why we use it as a special chest in the randomizer. But yeah, that ribbon, even though it's -5, it doesn't matter. It's resistance to all elements. And that's one of 3 ribbons that'll be available in this game, somewhere in all of its chests.
Yeah, and resistance to all elements is critical for a number of reasons, but one, it provides protection against insta-death spells, and those can be just absolutely crippling. If you have a fighter with 600 HP, that's not going to get, hit down or nuked down very easily by the late-game bosses, but could still go down to a single Bane or Crack or Brack. The other thing is that elemental resistance is going to make a lot of spells do half damage to them. So that's going to save on heal pots and just make everything a little bit safer. So a ribbon always an important pickup, and you'll see them put it on their life casters most of the time until they get to the later feats.
So Burt Reynolds, I've noticed that his levels are quite excellent already. He's up to 18 across the board thanks to the very generous experience scaling that we've got on today's flag set. So he should have no trouble as he's getting into these later parts of his adventure, as well as pushing on towards the end game. Key item update, we found an herb at the Sarda incentive that was at the Crescent Lake location, and DVS also just found a bottle inside the ice cave, which is rolled to the east side of the Titan's tunnel.
Yeah, and if you were watching DVS's screen, you probably saw something a little bit interesting there. So he went down a pit and then just immediately warped back up. And of course, this isn't possible in the vanilla game, but in the randomizer, you can of course get warp before you enter the ice cave, and that allows you to do a little trick there to get that incentive item even earlier than what you're normally supposed to be able to do. So there he goes again, and boom, gets to check 3 chests very quickly. So that's just, a good heads-up play.
And Burt is doing a little bit of grinding. This is one of the rarest enemies in the entirety of Final Fantasy I Vanilla, rather, the Iron Golem. They are the Encounter 8, which is the rarest encounter set, on the final Fiend floor in Temple of Fiends Revisited in Vanilla, the Tiamat floor. So very, very, very rarely seen, whether you're a professional player or a casual player. But in the randomizer, there are a number of ways you can see rare enemies more commonly. One way is for them to be shuffled onto forced encounter tiles, like the one Burt is looking at here. And another way, of course, is on the floors where they natively would appear. The rarity of which encounter is most common is shuffled, so we might even see them again later. Actually, no, we won't, because there's something special about our Temple of Fiends today.
Yes. We don't talk about that quite yet, Cheesinator. But yeah,
Okay.
These forced encounter tiles are very helpful. Well, they can be very painful at times, but they can also be very helpful. So you'll see that the runners kind of get 2 different kinds of encounters, and it's not you can't easily tell them apart as a viewer unless you're familiar with it. But basically, as they're walking, they're incrementing something called the encounter table, and as you go through, once you hit a certain place and it matches up against a certain number, for great simplification, they're going to get an encounter. So you're going to get encounters just kind of walking around naturally. But other locations, when you walk on a specific tile, you will always get an encounter, and that encounter will always also be the same. So that's what you were seeing Burt Reynolds do there, to make sure that he got that very lucrative Iron Gall encounter numerous times by just walking onto that forced encounter tile over and over again.
So, got a little bit more exploration happening here. DVS is in the Earth Cave location, which started out with the Sea Shrine split, as we call it. We call it a split because there are 2 different directions of randomized floors that can be tacked onto it, depending on which direction you go. And went right and has found the Earth 3 floor. Now this has 2 significant things on it. One is that it's got an incentive chest that's behind the vampire, where you would find the ruby in the vanilla game. And also, it has the rod plate. That rod plate is locked until you have the rod. You cannot pass through it to the floors beneath.
Yeah, and because it's locked, that means that DVS is going to have to come back here later, and that's just very unfortunate. Now, you might be wondering, why DVS hasn't picked up the floater yet, and the reason is because he was just a little bit short on money. So what he's also doing here is taking a few fights, getting some money, and we have really good like really generous money scaling on right now. So he's going to be getting tons of money, and he'll be in the air shortly, but he's just clearing out a dungeon on the way.
Yep, he's got warp, so he'll be able to get back out of here quickly. Meanwhile, Burt Reynolds explored the Ice Cave entrance and has found Crescent Lake nearby to its original home, and he's just stocking up on some supplies right now. They're very cheap.
Crescent Lake, of course, is going to have two kind of important things once again. It's going to have level 6 magic, which is a little bit high, but still something that these runners could potentially use soon, as well as an incentive location in the Circle of Sages, who in the vanilla game are going to give you the canoe, one of those key movement options that we're still missing right now. With the floater, the canoe's not as important, but there's still an entrance that it locks. So the runners may potentially still need to find that canoe.
Alright, so DVS's party, poisoned across the board. That's not as scary in the randomizer as it is in the vanilla game. For starters, pure potions are both cheaper and easier to buy in mass, and also dungeon dives just aren't dangerous to the level that they are in vanilla. However, this mob that we've run into has turned at least one of our party members to stone, so I think we want to get away from this.
While DVS tries to get away from these ogres, Burt Reynolds picks up the ruby. So we did find Titan's Trove earlier, and that Titan is hungry for rubies. And by giving that Titan the ruby, Burt Reynolds is going to be able to open 4 more chests, one of which is an incentive location. So that incentive location could, for example, give us the rod, which we need to progress further down this dungeon.
Alright, and Burt, taking good notes, remembers where he found the western entrance to the Titan's Tunnel, and is going to be able to get 3 regular treasures and the incentive here.
So that, unfortunately, that gold -5 is actually going to be worse than the silver bracelet +2, and that's kind of where, once again, the random armor weapon bonuses make a bit of a difference.
Yep. And we saw something there we haven't touched on too much yet. I alluded to it in the prelude to this match, but we've shuffled the item magic. That means like things that you think of like the Thor hammer, the Zeus gauntlet, the mage staff, the heal helmet, that in the vanilla game cast a spell when used in battle. We've shuffled different spells onto them, and what Burt Reynolds just picked up there was the defense sword, which is normally just called the defense, or just defense. So it's a sword, but it has Invis 2 on it, so it's going to be casting the spell Invis 2 in battle just like a white shirt would in the vanilla game. So a couple layers of indirection there, but still pretty useful item to have. And lastly, it even had a modification on it. It had rolled down to -1, so probably won't be used much as a weapon.
Yeah, but luckily those caster items, so the -1 does not affect the spell itself. And because of that, that's still going to be a really nice pickup for these runners. So I was wondering why DVS wasn't warping out here earlier, and that's because he wanted to take this Perilous grind. And the reason for this is that Ice 3 is quite good against them. So taking these out pretty easily and going to get some levels, and then he's going to warp out of here and feel just great about going into some of these later dungeons.
We actually are still a little bit short on magic. You'll notice we started the game at Canaria, where we can buy level 1, and we quickly found Melmond, and later we found Crescent Lake, so we found levels 1, 5, and 6. But with this airship, we actually could be pushing to explore for more towns sooner, and I think that would be in the best interests of these runners to find more magic options, to maybe find something like a Life or a Heal 3 that could make playing through the rest of the siege just a little bit safer.
Yeah, Provoca and Elfland are the 2 cities that they're looking for in particular. As Cheesenator said, that will have level 2, 3, and 4 magic. Elfland in particular has levels 3 and 4 all bundled together nicely. And because of that, you can check just very quickly just the top floors, because we do know that the towns are all going to be located right at the surface. So you can just kind of quickly hop in. If it's not what you're looking for, you can exit out or just reset out and then keep checking. And getting early magic can really speed things up. Now, one of the reasons it's not as punishing right now as it could be in some other seeds is because of the fact they have warp and exit early. With these entrance floor shuffles, warp and exit are just such important spells, but the fact that these runners have already found it makes it a little bit less important, but absolutely. Life will speed things up if they find Nuke as well. That would make their Black Mage a lot better. And also just, knowing where Fast and Temper are is going to make the Temple of Fiends Revisited just feel a little bit better as well.
So DVS, he's now exploring the left side of that C-split, which has led to the top floor of the Earth Cave, which has 5 chests and some more of these perilous forced encounter tiles. So he's just digging this out. He found a flame sword, but the flame sword's probably not that useful compared to the dragon sword +5 that he bought in the shop a while ago. That's honestly a weapon you could win the game with if you wanted to.
Okay, so DVS kind of finished clearing out Earth 1, and let's see what we have next. Oh, okay, so this is an interesting find. So this is the bottom of the Marsh Cave, one of the first it's really the first main dungeon that you're going to go to in the vanilla game. But what's important here is that there's actually 2 different key items on this floor. However, one of them is going to be locked behind the key, which is something that they haven't found yet. So they'll be able to check one of them, but they're going to have to make a mental note to come back later if they're still looking for something in the late game. And this is the first of the incentive items, which is going to be located behind what's the vanilla wizard tile.
Yep. But it's rolled a Gurnaga and some airs today, and we actually already saw these airs earlier in the volcano. They were kind of high HP, but DVS got initiative on the fight and was able to get a free round of damage in to make it pretty bearable. And, oh boy, a Fire 3 shirt. So we don't actually know, based on that description, whether that's equipable by a white wizard or a black wizard after promotion. That could be the white shirt or the black shirt, but we do know that it casts Fire 3 in battle, so we have something that gives us infinite Fire 3 casts.
Yeah, sometimes random item magic give us, and sometimes it takes us, and right now it's giving, because those are 2 really nice rolls, Fire 3 as well as Invis 2. Kind of some key things that you're looking for, infinite cast of a sweeper, as well as some good defensive options that you can spam in the late game.
Burt, he's over here on the western portion of the Earth continent using his his airship, behind the floater, of course, to explore more entrances, and he's found what we call the Volcano Armory. This is not a room that you spend a lot of time in vanilla because the treasures chests aren't too valuable, but in Randomizer, it's just a lot of what could be anything, and you definitely want to dig this out. He's already found an orblet, and maybe even find some spicy gear.
So we do have a question in chat, and yeah, if you're joining us a little bit later, so this is just a slightly different seed than what you normally do. Normally you want to light all 4 orbs, which is going to let you enter the Temple of Fiends Revisited. In this case, instead, they're going to need to collect 32 orblets in order to break that orb, but you still need to defeat Chaos in order to win. So collecting the orbs will not win immediately, but it will let them get to the end game.
Alright, so Burt Reynolds clearing out what we can call, just if you look at this visually, it's kind of a descriptor, the hairpin chests. You wrap around up and down through these tight little quarters that look kind of like, actually more like a paper clip maybe than a hairpin, but it's kind of more of a hairpin turn like in racing. Anyways, that's neither here nor there, but Burt Reynolds going to finish out all of these treasure chests before moving on. Just a really lucrative floor in general. Got like 15 or something checks out of here.
Yeah, it's really a nice floor to find. Now, sometimes you can skip these kind of harder to get chests, but every orblet really counts, and every orblet you check means that there's less entrances that you even need to go into, or dungeons you need to dive at all. So that's why checking these chests early can be very nice, but you're going to expect them to start to skip a few more as they find things like Tia and Kraken, because if they find those and they know that they can get enough orbs to win, they can then stop opening chests. Right now, though, they are still kind of looking for a little bit of an endgame sword. Yes, they can win with some of those +5 weapons, but the Excal will work if they can find the tail and the place to promote.
Oh, actually, it's free tail, I believe, tonight. Let me just double check the flags, but I think we're on free tail, which means we could mark that on the tracker as well. So they just need to find Bahamut, who wasn't necessarily going to be behind the floater. but we're already in the air anyways. So yeah, once we find Bahamut, who could be at the surface or could be very deep at the bottom of the dungeon, we'll be able to do our class promotion and get access to better weapons and magic.
Yeah, so class promotion, something that's, not unique to Final Fantasy by any stretch, but interesting in this in that it doesn't necessarily provide better stats immediately. Instead, what it does is it's going to let the fighter cast levels 1 through 3 white magic. It's going to let our wizards cast better magic, like higher level magic, and it's going to let the fighter equip much, much better gear, as well as the mages equip slightly better gear. So promotion's going to be helpful, but not necessarily essential. So we'll have to see if the runners choose to forgo that.
And that's a pretty good hammer there. So the Lit 2 hammer, that's just the Thor hammer with a different name, but it also has a +4 modifier on it, so it might even be a respectable weapon. However, you have to be promoted to equip it.
Yeah, so promotion is getting a little bit more important, but if they do find like a Masa plus anything, they may be able to go without.
Alright, as we see the runners crisscross some of the territory that each other one has already been to before, let's fill in some of the blanks here. We've been talking about finding, a weapon that's good enough to beat the game with, and what do you want to kind of equip on your characters, and what do you want to wear after promotion? Well, these modified weapons, the most important modifier on them is their crit rate. Crit rates are different in the randomizer than in vanilla. In vanilla, the crit rate could be interpreted as a bug or maybe a last-minute change in the code, but it's set to the index number of the weapon. So just the later that the weapon appears in the game's inventory is what its critical rate would be, which tends to skew towards the late-game weapons have the highest critical rates. But there was another hidden value in the code, unused, but that more matched what might be a thematic critical rate, which is why I say the katana, the ninja's best weapon, has a very high critical rate compared to other weapons. And in this blessed and cursed mode, we can roll up and down on crit rates for weapons to actually kind of skew which might be the favorite weapon to finish with. And higher critical rates let you defeat high absorb fiends. High absorb being one of the challenges of randomized stats.
Yeah, the other reason a high crit rate is really important is because we can change how many hits we get using fast. We can change how much damage we do using temper and getting levels, but there's no way to increase the crit rate. So we can kind of modify our weapons around a little bit if we need to kind of fill a gap, but crit rate, there's no way to get around it. So that's why it's so important to have a weapon with a high base crit in the late game for all the reasons that Cheesinator just mentioned.
And a quick update on where we are in our progress towards the end of the game. So we've known where the final dungeon will be since the beginning because the Temple of Fiends rolled to its vanilla spot. And as far as progress to that, Burt Reynolds is sitting on, I want to say 19 or 20 orblets right now. He just needs to get to 32. So we're probably talking about him finishing out 5 more dungeons or so. He's not going to have to full clear the entire map, I don't think, though he may in just looking for those locations like towns that we said were important.
Yeah, I do expect Burt, once he hits the vanilla Cardia Isle locations, to just kind of start checking in for towns or quick kills. So if he finds Tia on floor 1 or Kraken on floor 1 or Elflin and Provoca critically, as he's in a pretty good orb position at this point, so that's when you have to start thinking, it's not necessarily how do I full clear the game, it's how do I get what I need to win. And in this case, that just means a little bit of endgame gear as well as just enough orbs to get in. You don't need 33, you don't need 34, you need exactly 32. You can get more, but you should be aiming for that 32 number the whole time.
And speaking of the Cardias, after, let's see, where is he off to? Quick stop here by Matoya, so Bert's going to stop in, visit this dungeon that we haven't been to since the very early portions of the Seed. And then I think by proximity after here, he'll probably head up to those Cardia Islands, but like we were mentioning. Oh, this is the Dwarf Cave, of course, and he's got a TNT to turn in.
Yeah, so there's lots of good gear. So for example, that Massa that we keep talking about, which is the best sword in the game, depending on how it rolls, is an incentive item, so it could just be right here behind these dwarves. And this is what we call lazy dwarves, where we have to give the TNT to one dwarf so that he can give us the adamant to give it to another dwarf. So, you know, they couldn't figure it out so that they could just pass it over, so we have to do it for them.
We've recently found both the Oxiel and the Rod on Burt's side, and those items are things that you'd normally need to finish the progression of the vanilla game to get to Lich and to get to Kraken, but in this case, they'll just be unlocking a little bit of extra dungeon checking. The Rod floor, you know, behind it, it could be a dead end, it could be many more shards, it could be a fiend. Similarly, the Oxiel will let you go to the town of Onrak, wherever it is, and find another random dungeon underneath the town.
Yeah, so Burt gonna give us a look at that rod lock location. So we'll have to see what this rod leads to and if it's something important.
DVS has found the kindly old king in the Northwest Castle. Unfortunately, doesn't have the crown or the key, so we'll not be doing any further exploration in this dungeon. That was down at the volcano, where we saw Burt explore earlier.
Yeah, so DVS just kind of re-exploring ground that Burt has already done. So both of our runners, you know, doing the southern continent first, but we're going to be seeing them going up to the northern continent very soon here. In the vanilla game, the northern continent is where you go second, so that's kind of a natural route, and sometimes, but in this case, with the floater early, there was just kind of not a reason, but when you're used to doing these entrance floor shuffles, you kind of get in the habit of clearing areas of the world, and you want to make sure that you're full clearing those areas, so that way you don't kind of forget that, hey, I went here, or I didn't go here. So what you're seeing the runners do right now is just make sure they're keeping good mental notes, knowing that, hey, I've kind of cleared out this whole area, I can kind of forget about it for the rest of the seed, and then they'll be going on to the next one.
Also funny that that rod lock led to a shortcut to Lich. It just skipped Earth 4 entirely, and Burt is pulling another one of the fiends. This will also be a 2 orblet reward.
Yeah, so Lich being the first major fiend in the game, not going to put up too much of a threat, though it does look like he has a little bit of HP. Lich in the vanilla game has 400 HP, so can roll as high as 1200, but with doing nothing but Lit, Dark not really going to do much to this particular party, so, or any party for that matter. So we should see Lich going down shortly, and there we go. So at that, Burt has lit his second orb, but critically at this point just gotten 2 more orblets.
Yep, it looked like he was on, I think, 22 there in that inventory, so just 10 away from what would be go mode in this flag set. DVS checking out the shops. He's continued to leave the White Mage down to funnel experience onto the other characters. The White Mage was a Fade caster, so, you know, has some utility in clearing through the game faster, but by putting more experience onto the fighter, and the Red Mage in particular, who could also cast that, you're setting yourself up for a safer late game, because the fighter's HP and an ability to damage late fiends will go up more drastically with levels than any of the magic users.
Yeah, magic users, generally you want more magic users at lower levels, while your melee carry you really do want the levels on, because each level they get is going to potentially increase the number of hits they have, as well as increase their damage per hit. Whereas the mages, you know, when they go up a level or 2, they might get 1 more spell charge, but that isn't nearly as important. The big thing that you do want levels on your mages for is HP, as the highest rolling spell in the game that enemies can cast is Nuke. And that can do up to 400 damage. So something that you're going to see these runners usually try and get to is have 400 HP on one of their life casters or close to it.
I also have to say I'm a little surprised. Burt Reynolds turned up his nose at the Fire 3 shirt. Maybe he thought he saw a Fire +3 shirt, but I'm pretty sure that was a Fire 3 The Spell shirt, though maybe I was misreading it.
I was wondering the same thing, if that's just like a, you know, black shirt +3 that casts fire. But regardless, it's still pretty good late game gear. Even like, you know, a black shirt +3 is good armor.
Exactly. And Burt Reynolds has already found another Fiend floor here. So going to go down to Kraken. This shouldn't be too difficult of a dive here. Only one floor, and we're playing with quite low encounter rates compared to vanilla. The encounter rates are less than half of their vanilla values. And yeah, Burt Reynolds also already very high level there. His fighter is over 560 HP, so he should have no trouble beating Kraken. We got a raid coming in, party of 17 from Ryguy 3745. Welcome and thank you for bringing your viewers to the No Kid Hungry Marathon. You're watching a race of the Final Fantasy I Randomizer.
I'm Jat, and I'm joined in the booth here by Cheesinator, so thanks for stopping by, and we hope you enjoy the entrance floor shuffle kind of showcase race.
Alright, Burt Reynolds, he's having multiple characters here cast Lit 3. Lit 3 is, of course, hitting on the weakness of the Kraken. That's a pretty standard strategy from even the vanilla game if you're fighting this. Trying to get through about 800 HP here. Wants to ensure that at least one character lives through the entire fight, so he's bruising up that white mage, but it doesn't matter. Kraken went down to about 600 total damage, so it must have rolled down on its HP.
Yeah, so these Cardia Isle locations are very entrance dense, and that's why they're really nice to check with the floater. So sometimes runners will prioritize going here a little earlier, clear out this area of the world first, but in this case both runners have kind of chosen to go now, about 50 minutes into the seed, and they're going to get rewarded by Provoca, which has Cure 4 available, which is the best healing spell in the game, as it's going to heal 100% of a character's HP, as well as remove status effects, as well as Bicky, who usually is, very early game boss, but will still provide us with a key item.
Yep, that Cure 4, learnable by all three of our white casters, though the fighter will have to get promoted and level up into magic charges before being able to make use of it, which might not happen this game. The key, though, that's great. The key's going to open up a lot more treasure checks, which will just further Burt's advantage he's sort of been building in getting to more of these orblets more quickly than DVS has, because Burt got a big chunk of 4 from the Kraken kill, so he's on to probably 26 or 27 by now.
Yeah, so DVS is going to check another entrance first, and finding ordeals, which is something that he could consider doing, but at this point it's just going to be a number of chests. It's not going to necessarily help him get orbs, but it does still have a key item.
Yep, and one thing about this entrance and floor shuffle that we do, certain dungeons are left intact, kind of for the sake of not being too confusing, but also making sure that they function properly sort of as units. So Ordeals, with its whole pillar maze concept, is left intact, and Ice Cave, with the whole idea of going through the loop and then coming out the stairs at the end, is also left intact from the 4th floor onwards. We've already seen that Ice Cave, of course, and now we're seeing DVS do the Temple of Ordeals, which has the tail in the vanilla game.
Yeah, so, okay, 2 notes. One is that Burt Reynolds did just find a second ribbon, and that's really going to help secure his late game, insta-kill security. And the other thing is you're seeing DVS using Warp again to great effect, where Warp goes from quote-unquote floor to floor, but the way that this Ordeals is coded is that each time you take a pillar, it's like you changed floors. So if you go to the wrong pillar, instead what you can do is just warp out of that, and you end up back where you were, so you don't have to retraverse the entire maze. So that's just a nice way to save some time, and that's what you saw him doing right there, and boom, he gets to the end.
Yeah, and I'm seeing 30 total orblets for Burt, so he's getting into a really solid position. He's gonna need... I think he's going to need a little bit more offense, though it does depend on what kind of Topher we run into as far as the rolls, because it could roll low, and this pre-promotion weaponry and like the level 1 fade that we've got could end up being enough.
Yeah, it's going to be a little bit challenging without promotion. We'll have to see if they keep on looking for that, but as you said, there's kind of the one who knows goes, and if you're in go mode, it's really tempting to just try and dive Temple of Fiends Revisit and see if you get through. Worst case scenario, you wipe out, and you just have to go out and try and get a few more levels, or get a little bit better gear, or find promotion.
Yep. And Nuke is still out in the wild, I'm pretty sure. As
Yeah.
far as things that could be a boon to our late game capabilities, it's very likely at this point that it's rolled to level 3 or 4, which we haven't seen. So hunting down entrances for Elfland, probably just as important as digging out dungeon bottoms to look for promotion. But hey, Burt Reynolds now has all 3 ribbons in the game.
Wow, can't complain about that at all. We also have not found Fast or Temper. So, you know, missing out on a couple key spells here.
However, a decent substitute for Temper, not a 1-to-1, but a decent substitute, is the Lock spell, and DVS just found that the Light Axes have rolled to the spell Lock. Lock has been fixed. It's actually bugged in vanilla, but it's been fixed in the randomizer. Not only that, but it's been buffed so that it always lands. So we can lower the evasion of enemies, especially fiends, in order to enable our melee carry, this fighter, to hit them more often. But beyond that, Lock is also available in the shops, as DVS has found Elfland and is buying level 3 magic as we speak.
Yeah, speaking of everything we were just talking about, there's level 3 Temper and level 3 Lock 2. So Lock 2 actually does the same thing as Lock, except it is AoE. So just gonna work just as well. And also, there we go, level 3 Life 2 in the first slot. So you could not ask for a better location for Life 2. I guess level 1 or something, but level 3 is perfect, as that's going to allow all 3 of our white magic casters to cast it once the fighter promotes to a knight.
Yep. So promotion right now brings a lot of safety and maybe a little bit of extra offense. I think right now I feel safe enough based on the kind of gear and magic we have, and that the really important thing to find is more ways to deal damage. And Temper gets us a lot of the way there, because Temper is going to enable any weapon to become strong enough to break through difficult scaling on a fiend. And we've got some pretty respectable crit rates. The Dragon Sword in the Canaria shop that rolled with a +5 blessing, that's a 25 crit rate, which is very, very strong.
So both our runners doing a little bit of shopping, but Burt has a nice little ore blade at this point, so he's probably going to be entering Temple of Fiends Revisited first, but we're going to have to see if DVS does a little bit of extra exploration and may come in with better gear. So that's kind of the advantage that DVS is hoping for, is that, you know, maybe Burt hits go mode first, but DVS has to clear a couple more locations, and because of that maybe gets promotion, maybe finds his Massa, maybe finds the Power Bonk, or something along those lines. And this is all just various gear that will help him out.
Oh, this is, we found Lefane, so we can actually do the other half of our slab translation, which was done so long ago in the game. Normally when you translate the slab through Dr. Oon in the vanilla game, you get a chime, and today we got a chime as well, which just means one more dungeon can be looked at, whatever dungeon has rolled into the location at Mirage Tower.
And here we go, DVS gonna go check the remaining 2 locations, and we'll be happy with finding what he does.
And Burt just shoots off immediately. He's going to find out what the chime is hiding right away. I think we've seen every town. But here's promotion, so good find for Burt. That's really going to unlock his capabilities. He's going to be able to equip that Excal with a +4 blessing.
Yeah, and that Excal +4 is going to be absolutely massive. So the Excal is a really interesting weapon, in that in the vanilla game, it was both amazing and also not working as intended, in that its special ability is that it is effective against all enemy weaknesses. So if the enemy is weak to fire, it's super effective against. If it's weak to ice, it's super effective against. If it's weak to lit, it's super effective against, etc. But in the vanilla game, those weaknesses were bugged on weapon attack, so it didn't work as expected. However, because of the previously mentioned crit rate bug, or feature depending on how you look at it, it had a fantastic crit rate as it was very late in the weapon table, which made it an incredibly powerful sword. In this game, its crit rate lags behind a little bit, but it does get that elemental bonus back. So it kind of balances out in the end, except against the very late game fiends, where the lower crit rate hurts a little bit.
And to talk a little bit about the strategy here, so Burt Reynolds, you'll see him, he immediately came back to the same place he was just at. Lefane had that chime, which sent him over to the Mirage Tower to promote, and then he came back because he could learn Fast, which is level 8, and he's already level 25, so his Black Wizard already has 1 charge of that Fast and could still get more before the end.
Yeah, so we've talked a little bit about Fast, and that's because Fast is quite an important spell. So what Fast does is it increases your hit multiplier. So your hit multiplier starts at 1, so you do 1 times however many hits you get, which at this point in the game is going to be 4 or 5 for the fighter. And then, but if you cast Fast, that hit multiplier is going to go up to 2. So then once it's 2 times 5, and then you get 10 hits, and that 10 hit is literally double the damage. So Fast is a really important damage multiplier. The other thing it protects against is if one of the late game fiends casts slow too, that turns your hit multiplier to 0, and that makes you only do 1 hit. So Fast is both a great piece of security as well as a big damage boost, so that's why it's a really important spell.
Alright, so Burt also picked up Life 2 on the promoted knight. Being at level 25 when he promoted, he's going to need to wait until level 27, and subsequently 29, 31, 33, and so on, for a chance to actually earn a magic charge so that knight can even cast the spell. But there's still time yet for him to gain a few levels, which he might end up needing to do if the final boss or bosses are too difficult.
So Burt Reynolds just desperately searching for his last few shards here. The big one that he's looking for at this point is if he finds Tiamat's floor, so the top of the Sky Palace, he will be able to get all the shards he needs, the orblets he needs. But he could also just open a few more chests and find what he needs, as he's so close at this point.
And he's found the second floor of the Earth Cave here down at this dungeon at the Lefane location. He's also making aggressive use today of what we call the NPC Guillotine convenience feature. No more getting blocked by bats. In this randomizer, if you turn on the NPC Guillotine, you can eliminate enemies that have or NPCs rather, that have a single line of text will just disappear after you talk to them. So that includes bats, dragons, mermaids, some of the old men, a whole lot of them. But the most important one is those bats who can get in your way when you're going through the Earth Cave and the Marsh Cave.
Yeah, as we've mentioned before, we have a fantastic dev community. You know, like if there's an annoyance in the game, we have speed hacks on. We have all these great bug fixes. This is the Final Fantasy that you played as a kid, but we've kind of made it, you know, marathon safe. We've made it speed runnable. We've made it so that you would love to race it multiple times in a single day versus having to play it really slow. So, you know, if you're like, hey, I love Final Fantasy, but I didn't love spending, you know, hours grinding or walking very slowly throughout the game, as you can see, this is not quite the same, so that's a big benefit.
DVS just picked up a couple of solid pieces of gear, some shields that rolled high. He is not, however, promoted yet, so his fighter can't actually do anything with them. But he's catching up. This is his first time visiting the Elfin Castle and be able to turn in his herb as well as check the 4 locked chests here. Burt, though, seems to have found his go mode. I believe that was 32 orblets I saw in his inventory.
Yeah, so Burt is ready to enter the Temple of Fiends Revisited for the first time, and now that we're getting here, Cheese, do you want to say a little bit about what we have in store for us, as this is not the normal Temple of Fiends Revisited that you saw when you played this game for the first time?
Yeah, so we're doing something special today. We've got 2 things that change how the endgame is going to look. We've got the short Temple of Fiends, and we've got the alternate final boss. Now, I won't spoil what can happen in that alternate final boss fight. That has yet to be seen, but the short Temple of Fiends is just 1 floor. It's just Chaos's floor, and it'll have 2 Fiend tiles in either direction. So if you want to go left to fight Chaos, you have to fight, you know, possibly one of Lich and or Carrie or Tiamat and so on, and the other side will have the other 2 that you didn't fight there. So you kind of have some options. You can go left or right, and if you don't like what you see, you can reset. Speaking of not liking what you see, Burt Reynolds saw some good gear there, but that had rolled with poor modifiers, so he's not interested in the Canaria treasury. He's just going to go and try to beat the game.
So here we go. So you'll get to see, not only do we have short turf one, that also means that you're going to get all your chests right away. So all the ones that are in the vanilla Temple of Fiends Revisited, you just kind of get to pick up for free, which is a nice little benefit of this. And there's the first spike tile. So he unfortunately hit the 4th Fiend, and now there's arguments to be made whether this or Kraken 2 is harder, but this is going to be one of the tougher Fiend refights compared to Lich or Carry.
Yep. So to talk a little bit about what kind of challenge we might be looking at, I don't think we're going to see a challenge from the defenses of Tiamat here, who just took like 460 damage from that Excal. But indeed, the stats and the HP on the Fiends can roll as low as 30% and as high as 300% of their vanilla. So Tiamat could be all the way up to 3300 HP, but we're doing decent damage. However, Nuclear, yeah, so the late game Fiends, they have spells and skills that are shuffled between each other, and that includes the 4 Nuclears that Warmech casts in the vanilla game. Those can land on your Krakens and your Tiamats and make the late game very scary.
Okay, so we're down to 2 warriors here on Burt Reynolds' sides, but he gets through, and luckily both of those remaining characters have life available, so they can bring back those party members at full health. But he decides that he doesn't want anything to do with Tiamat, so he's probably going to go the other way here.
Finds Kraken, so no luck here. Sometimes you happen to get a seed that Kraken and Tiamat are both on the same side of the short Topher, but no dice. He could have resurrected his characters there with the Red Mage. The Knight hasn't yet learned charges there for that. Oof! 13 hits on Kraken today, so that White Mage is no more. And neither is that Fighter. Oof. Yeah, I think we're going to take the Tiamat. Honestly, that Kraken's hitting way too hard. Oh, Burt, not even a fan. He's actually going to go look for a forced encounter tile like this one that's just full of experience. And get some levels, which I don't blame him for.
Yeah, this is a nice veteran move here. Knowing when you think you can get through is just a little bit better luck, and when you need to go and take a few more levels, our experience gain is really high here. So taking a few fights is going to just get you that extra HP, those extra spell charges, and critically those spell charges on the Knight. Just to have 1 life 2 cast would be very important at this point. So just taking a few levels here, and oh my goodness, 11,000 experience for that one fight.
Yeah, this is already one of the best possible forced encounter tiles here. This is not something that would appear on a forced encounter tile in the vanilla game, but we've shuffled in the B-side encounters of a number of fights to be possible on these spike tiles. And this encounter you would actually only see in the encounter 8 of the seafloor in Temple of Fiends Revisited in vanilla, so very, very rare. But yeah, up to 2 Nagas and up to 6 Waters. Already enemies that give you a lot of experience individually, and the screen is just full of them.
So yeah, in no time at all here, Burt Reynolds is going to get a few charges of life onto that Knight, and the Knight being the tankiest member of the team is the most likely to survive, and because of that, having life is very important. I do anticipate that he will be going for the Tia fight again, though, instead of that 13-hit Kraken.
Yeah, in order to be successful against that Kraken fight, we would need to be able to very quickly raise the evasion both of individual characters and of the team. But we didn't find, a sword or a staff or anything that cast ruse with our item magic shuffle. So we're lacking in that department. DVS is exploring the key-locked bottom of the Marsh Cave and has found some interesting encounter tiles. And we'll also get to check one more incentive, which could be a Maza, and it could have rolled up. We don't have too many incentives left in the game to see. I think we didn't see Waterfall, and we didn't see what Astos had for us, and maybe a handful of others.
Yeah, we haven't turned in the Crystal, and yeah, we haven't found Waterfall. And this is another nice tile, actually, on DVS's side. This Mage Fighter tile is also worth a lot of EXP, and ooh, okay, the Mage has some HP, but the Fighters rolled very low. But as you can see, 4,000 compared to the 11,000 on Burt Reynolds' side. Burt Reynolds really just getting just a fantastic spike tile here, so really couldn't ask for much more.
Yeah, the experience today, it's aggressively good. We have a 4.0 scaler that reduces the amount you need to level up by 4x compared to vanilla. We have a flat 100 extra EXP and gold, also scaled then down by that 4x per enemy that you kill. And we have plus 10% total experience yield from enemies per key item collected, and we've collected about 20 of those over the course of the game. So piling it on enabled Burt to get over 30 for this Tiamat fight he's now on.
Yeah, so Spiky takes a little bit of a dirt nap, but this should not be a problem at all, as long as he gets out with at least one Life 2 caster left, which at this point for Burt Reynolds is just his Knight and his White Mage, or White Wizard. He will be totally fine to go on to the next fight. And the next fight we know is going to be hopefully one of the easier ones. Carry 2 and Lich 2 could both roll, you know, nukes and nuclears, which are the scariest spells that these Fiend refights can have, but they will have lower HP, like caps, than these later Fiends.
Also, really nice roll from the Fade there. That final one that took out Tiamat rolled 310 out of a possible 320. Here we go, Lich, low magic defense, only 500 HP in vanilla, and not really threatening physically, and also not resistant to Earth. So one shot and done. Quake fell into a crack, terminated is Lich, and Burt Reynolds is about to pull the mystery final boss.
And the mystery final boss is what we call the Double Dragon. So this is a refight against both Carry and Tiamat. So these are the Fiend refights.
Yeah, and we didn't see Carry. Carry was on that right side. We know that Tiamat has a nuclear. Carry could be packing, but could also be very tame. Okay, Carry has a Cure 4 as the first spell on the script, so if this is to be some kind of a long fight, you know, more of a war of attrition, and the fight goes long enough for Carry to cast all of her spells another time, that Cure 4 could come back to matter.
So far this fight's going fairly well. We have Cure 4s of our own, Fast and Tempers on the fighter. This is going to turn this fighter into an absolute damage machine, and that's going to let him mow down these Fiend refights.
Ooh, really good roll on that Fade that hit Carry there. We're making use of the Invis 2 sword that we found earlier. So raising the evasion of the party, getting hit fewer times, but oof, will really help our survivability. And these Fiends are not long for this world. That was 10 hits for 1600 damage from the Excalibur there on Carry just now.
Yeah, and just Fast and Temper really showing their worth here. More hits, more damage per hit. That's just a great formula for success. And Tiamat's going to be going down with this swing, so... and Ice 2's not going to do it. So for everyone in chat, thank you very much, and get your GGs out in chat for our first place finisher, Burt Reynolds. He finished with an official time of 1 hour, 9 minutes on the dot.
Yeah, very, very impressive run from him. GG Burt, and he showed off how to handle this type of flag set, explored aggressively, made use of the high experience scaling, and knew that he had what it took to win.
Yeah, I really liked the way that Burt, you know, had a game plan, and he was like, you know what, I'm going to get my orbs, and I'm just going to go and see what happens. And then he went in, saw what happened, was like, you know what, I cannot quite do this, but I think I have enough gear, and so I'm going to go get levels with this fantastic EXP scaling, made an adjustment, found a great grind tile, and then, you know, finished the seed off from there. So that just goes to show, you know, experienced runners know what they're doing, and we have some great ones on tonight.
Alright, so let's turn our focus back to DVS, who's still chugging through the seed. Last I counted, he was in excess of 20 orblets, so he has the majority of what he needs to win. His levels were very good, high 20s, I believe, last time I saw the levels tick up. And he's currently digging out the Mermaid's Floor, which is an incentive, and today it held the what was the lit to sort of the French vanilla Thor hammer. He's only 4 orblets away, by the way, from being able to end the game, so he's quite close as well. I could definitely see him wrapping things up here in the next, you know, 10 minutes or so, based on how successful his trip into the Temple of Fiends Revisited is.
Yeah, really showing off the value of that NPC guillotine there. Again, these mermaids can be very trolly and just make you wait and wait and wait, so nice quality of life improvement continues to pay off. So DVS, trying to figure out where the fastest way for him to get the rest of those orbs are. doing the save outside town, and here we go. And unfortunately, this could potentially have a loose orblet, but just one floor of chests, 3 chests only, as this is one of the Cardia Isle locations. I believe he will be heading to Lefane next. Or Vanilla Chat location.
This looks like he'll finally get to be able to do his promotion, which, very important as we saw, given what it unlocks. That Excalibur was extremely powerful for finishing off the game.
And we are joined in chat right now by Burt Reynolds. So give him a GG, and if you have any questions or you want to shout out for what a great race he ran, that was a fantastic run by Burt.
Yeah, Burt noting in chat that he did not come across the canoe. The canoe was found by our other runner. DVS found it in the Marsh Key Lock. Of course, that canoe would have opened up the last 2 completely locked locations at Ordeals and Waterfall. We probably won't be seeing those today because DVS only needs to do, I think, 1 more dungeon really to round out his shards, or his orblets rather, and he'll probably get those from Lefane right here where Burt also got his last orblets. Oh, he's deviating to the Ordeals location.
Oh, right, because he of course has the canoe, so. Oh, this fight is awful. RN kilos, they can get very high HP, they hit hard, and they're just not worth as much experience as you would want them to be, so something that's good to run away from. And there we go, we get to see our canoe, there you go. There's your little 2-second clip of the first canoe, and here's something interesting.
Oh no, this is Sky Maze. I didn't realize this flag was on. Oh boy, you want to talk about this one?
Yeah, so, we said that our devs are very helpful and creative and that they do all sorts of things to, make the community a better place. Well, sometimes they also do things to make the community better, but also a much more frustrating place. And in this case, it is Sky Maze. So Sky Maze adds random walls, and randomizes the location of the exit to the next floor. So DVS has to kind of navigate around, get a feeling for the layout of the room, and then find that exit. So it's not just, up, right, or down, left, or whatever your preference is normally. Instead, he's going to have to wander around here a little bit, fighting, some fairly late game enemies. But these late game enemies at this point are pretty easy for him to take out and worth a ton of EXP, so not the worst thing he could be doing.
We are working at the moment on getting Burt in for a voice interview, but for the time being, you can ask him your questions in the chat.
Yeah, Black Mage is 756 pointing out that we didn't find the Tia floor either, and that means that I think at this point it's in Waterfall, or it's behind the, kind of French vanilla behind the sky.
Yeah, we did see the cube locked floor earlier in the game, but we have not collected the cube. So that's another unexplored dungeon bottom.
But yeah, DVS getting some nice levels here, kind of doing the grind beforehand until Temple of Fiends revisited. Oh man, just the Sky Maze just continuing to cause... it just gives me nightmares.
Yeah, this it's kind of funny. There's a deterministic way that you can get through a maze like this. If you to avoid retracing your steps, if you just hug one of the walls and always hug that particular wall until you've completely circumnavigated the maze. It can be slow and feel awkward at times, but it will get you there in case you're prone to losing track of your location.
Oh my goodness, and there it is. That was in a terrible location. Okay, so DVS onto Earth, and this is what we call the Earth Armory. Has a nice little 5-pack of chests here. Oh, 3 orblets remaining.
Was that Coral 5? I guess it's the equivalent of a Dragon 5, but it's still pretty sweet.
Yeah, it's always nice. Whenever you see that +5 modifier, you always just want to equip it, and it's definitely going to be better than that Ice -3 at this point. Oh, but
Yeah.
the Vorpal is also very good at that point.
The weapon modifiers are so powerful in this flag set that a +5 of just a low piece of gear that you normally find in the shop, like a scimitar or a longsword or something, that actually ends up coming out on top of a lot of the vanilla rolls, and especially the down rolls on what are normally considered like, elite swords, like the ice sword, like the flame sword. Those can get beaten out handily by just a saber.
So DVS taking one of these forced encounter tiles here, but going to get a little bit more experience.
Yeah, we saw an Orblet in this room, so yep, 2 to go.
And hopefully he just finds Tia on the next floor, and then he'll be able to go take Tia out and hit his go mode as well. And as you can see, with short Topher on, yes, it can be dangerous, but you also just get to go through incredibly fast.
Yep, you can reset out of any kind of trials or tribulations. So now that the boss has been spoiled and chat knows what the alternate final boss can look like, there are 3 other possible formations that we didn't see tonight. If you're interested in trying out the feature for yourself on the randomizer, you can fight Chaos with 8 garlands that all look the same. You can fight 2 Warmechs and 6 Evil Men, or you can fight 2 Liches and 4 Phantoms. So all packs that come with are different sort of challenges, and you have to kind of account for all these different possibilities when you're rolling up on the final boss with the alt final boss flag turned on.
Yeah, I particularly like the Garland and Friends or Chaos and Friends one, where it's kind of like playing whack-a-mole, where you're just like trying to figure out where that Chaos is, and I believe he moves each turn as well, right?
He does not move.
Oh, okay, so you just have to figure out which one it is.
Yeah, you just throw out an AoE cast, and Chaos will be revealed if you're paying attention. Which I've missed the Chaos on the first turn a few times before. So DVS has just 2 Orblets remaining. He's going to look to, I think, the Waterfall location to try and finish this out. Again, thanks to that canoe. He's just kind of doing everything he can to avoid making that long walk down to where Vanilla Lefane would be. Ooh. Actually, I don't think we ever saw this scouted, because we were in the air so early we didn't have to sail up here, but this is the Vanilla Onrak location, which has rolled some kind of a dungeon.
Just continue to get a little bit more EXP, but he'll be out of here in no time. He'll be running from most fights that he can get to, but another nice little convenience here, and this is something that I almost forgot was in the vanilla game after playing the randomizer for so long, but we replace all unrunnable fights with wait, which tells you, you know what, if you try and run, it's not going to work. I believe in the vanilla game, it just says you just click run and it just never works. And we're getting a little bit more Ice Cave. So this is Ice 1. So we actually have Ice 1 and Ice 2 flipped around, but in the same entrance. And what do we have? Okay, this has a large number of chests. This is Mirage 1. So hopefully he'll be able to find his last 2 Orblets here.
Yeah, we're getting pretty close. Like, the odds that any one of these chests have more Orblets is very high. There's an excess of them in the game. There's one of them. I'm not sure how many total of sort of the overflow count, but I would ballpark that there are at least like 5 to 10 to spare when you count like defeating every fiend and so forth.
Yeah, I believe I talked to one of the devs about it, and they mentioned that there's the number of orbs plus the fiends. So in this case, we'd have the 32 plus 4 plus 4 plus 2 plus 2. So, Twitch math aside, I believe that is 44.
Oh, and here's another thing that chat will maybe be impressed by that we can show off. This is the procedurally generated waterfall. Waterfall has been deconstructed and split into 4 sort of quadrants of interconnectable tiles, and then those are stitched back together, and can have loops both vertically and horizontally. So you can actually like go around in circles if you can't find it. But yeah, this is a waterfall that nobody's ever seen before, and you're seeing it for the first time. DVS is going to try and find the hidden room, well, not hidden so much, but the important room that's got 6 chests and the robot inside.
Yeah, normally the robot is what you're looking for, as he has a key item, but in this case I think the 6 chests are going to be just as tempting for DVS, just to hopefully find that last orblet. Oh, and we can see the room over on the left there. That now, of course, you can't just get there, but that does provide some information.
Also, shoutouts to canoeing above the waterfall, which he was just doing there momentarily.
Yeah, it's like out of bounds bad, but canoe.
Ooh, and we found it. Yeah, by looking to the right, we found the waterfall door on the left. And there's a vanilla cube, so similar to the chime, is this even randomized?
Oh no, 2 more chests. So if he does not find an orblet here, which he does not, so now he has 2 choices. He can either go to the cube block location, or he can go to Lefane. And we know that Lefane will provide him with the orblets he needs, but we'll have to see where DVS decides to go. Using a nice little strat there, so we haven't really talked about it as they've been in the air for a lot of the seed, but every time that he's doing, what he's doing is he's doing a soft reset, and that's going to let him skip through certain steps on the encounter table, which is basically going to let him skip encounters if he uses his save items and soft resets smartly. So that's what he was doing there, and you can see he gets quite a bit further without having to take a time-consuming fight.
Yep, and DVS, if he remembers where the rod lock is, of course Lich was behind that rod lock in the sort of convenient hop from Earth 3 to Earth 5. That's one other option he has for finishing this out. He's so close, he just needs one single solitary orblet. Ooh, but this might be his first time at Matoya. Or never mind, sorry. I keep talking about Matoya as like though it's vanilla. I remember there being an orblet in Matoya's room, but this, of course, is not the Matoya in this particular seed. Ah, he's gonna check key-locked dwarves. This has got to pay out, right?
Yeah,
8 chests?
This is gonna work, right? It's not just all the orbs in Lefane.
Another Excal. Wait, is that... Did we randomize treasures? I actually have to go back and look at the flags after this. Because there aren't supposed to be 2 Excals.
Last chest. He gets the orblet he needs. And with that, at the hour 24-minute mark, DVS is in go mode and is going to go figure out what fun the Temple of Fiends Revisited has for him.
Cool. Yeah, so that flag, the fact that we found 2 Excaliburs reveals to me that we actually had the randomized treasures flag on, so we could have had anywhere from 1 to like 5 or 6 or 7 copies of any particular gear or piece of armor. And oof, White Mage down. 3 characters left remaining for DBS here.
So Kraken is hitting hard, but I don't know if DVS has the same buff spells available to him that Burt Reynolds had.
Yeah, either way, I think that Kraken fight is just a no-go. It's rolled way too high physically. Let's take our chances with Tiamat. The levels here are pretty good. I think DVS is more than capable of getting through all this. Just needs to kind of go full offense, throw out some tempers. He did not buy fast, which his Black Mage could cast if he bought it at the Fane.
Yeah, but that fighter swing will get this job done eventually, and with these really nice rolling fades as well.
So where did Nuke land? Was Nuke like level 8 in Gaea and we just didn't see the shop?
Yeah, it must have been, it's level 7 or 8 somewhere, but we just didn't see it unfortunately. So Nuke landing in kind of a French vanilla-ish location, so a little bit unfortunate, Nuke being the highest non-elemental AoE sweeper in the game for these runners, so just unfortunate as this Black Wizard unfortunately having to cast Ice 3 instead, which is doing a measly 63 damage as Tia 2 resists it.
Yep. Thankfully, with only 2 fiends to go through here on this left side, we can kind of just spam our AoE magic. We don't have to worry about conserving resources the way we might if this were a long traditional Temple of Fiends Revisited.
But you can see here, like, just how important that fast spell is. Yes, this fighter is currently doing 250 damage, and DVS gets through, A-okay, but being able to double that, and then plus, that just makes each temper that you cast even more valuable as well. So, fast, a really good spell. Lich, on the other hand, not a really good fiend.
Yeah, we saw the first turn Quake out of Burt Reynolds there, but DVS showed that Lich rolled low enough to be one-shot by the Excalibur. So, DVS about to find out who the final fiend or fiends are. As we saw earlier, of course, it's going to be this double dragon formation with Carrie and Tiamat.
Shoutouts to Reese Wolf as DVS takes on the double dragons for tracking tonight.
Alright, so the approach here, you're probably going to want a little bit of evasion stacking, right? Especially if both of the fiends come out trying to hit. They can each be very powerful physically, but after a few evasion stacks, you're probably fine, because neither of these are as dangerous physically as a Kraken. That said, ribbons, like the many that we've found, very valuable with how you can kind of get spammed out with elemental AoEs from the fiends. And we did see that nuclear, that non-elemental AoE from Tiamat earlier. That can roll as high as 320, could actually kill all but, or at least the 2 top mages if the nuclear were to come out, say, next turn.
But Carrie also did not have a ton of HP here, so Carrie 2 goes down, and these tempers really paying off. And so, those buff magics, just excellent things for these late game fiendry fights, and really showing the power of it here. Invis, in a good position, really only just scared at this point of those non-elemental AoE sweepers if, Tia decides to come out with nuke or nuclear, but we've kind of already seen most of what he has to offer, so DVS should be finishing up here just under the 1 hour 30-minute mark.
Yeah, we're getting... Oh, and there comes the nuclear. Low rolls, though. Everyone's still alive, so that was probably our biggest fear. We're okay. We're going to cast Cure 4 to make sure that melee, that consistent DPS, stays alive for the remainder of the battle. Back up to 655 HP. We're in pretty secure territory, and with 5 hits, the Excal comes out swinging, and DVS does it, finishing with a time of 1 hour, 29 minutes, and 1 second. So get out your GGs for DVS.
So unfortunately we weren't able to get an interview together with these runners, but thanks to everyone who stuck around. Cheeseinator, do you have anything that you want to kind of finish us off with here?
I'd really love to thank everyone for tuning in at this hour. It may be very early or very late, depending on what your time zone is. But thank you so much for supporting the marathon, for checking out the Final Fantasy I Randomizer. We'd love to have you come join and play the game with us as part of our community. You can go to finalfantasyrandomizer.com, where you can join the Discord and learn how to play the game yourself, whether that's getting started just playing seeds or taking part in our organized events and learning the basics of how to play the game. So also thank you so much to SpeedGaming and the No Kid Hungry Marathon for giving us a chance to be on here. Thank you all as fans for donating. And I enjoyed my night here tonight. How about you, Jat?
Oh yeah, this was fantastic. So thanks again for everyone for having us, and thanks again for our tracker, Reese LaFleur, who was helping us out in the Discord here.
So we've got another run queued up for you next. Thank you all for joining us, and keep watching SpeedGaming. We'll see you next time.